Welcome to IXION. I am Kasedo, and I have made this guide to help you save time when you explore the science mission choices for the Prologue and Chapter 1, the Sol system. Be aware that this guide is spoiler heavy, and that you should not watch it if you want to experience the game firsthand, as even though I deal with only the science missions, you will see things in this video that spoils other things in the game. With that said, let's get started. A quick tip before we go into the science missions. If you start a science mission, the science ship cannot leave the point of interest until you have resolved the mission event chain, whether that is one or several choices. The exception to this is if an option states that you can leave and return later, but that is rare. However, you can postpone making a choice by clicking the X button up here, which will return you to the sector map. This will leave the science ship in orbit of the point of interest, and you can click the science mission icon to return to the list of options. The game introduces you to how to use science ships by asking you to go to the moon first. And I have not recorded that part because most likely you will be doing both of the options there anyways. The first one, which is the exploit security vulnerability at the facility, gives you 10 science. And then when you dismantle the facility, you get 30 alloys and 90 science. Saturn presents you with two options. You can either send a team to investigate, and this will yield 10 science, or you can attempt to locate debris in orbit, which will yield nothing. At Mars, you will get 3 options. You can either repair the fort in exchange for resources. This will yield 20 polymer in exchange for 20 alloys. You can repair the fort in exchange for research data. This will yield 10 science in exchange for 10 alloys and 10 polymer. Or you can refuse to help the facility, which gives you this, which I assume gives a negative impact later on in the game. And that brings us into Chapter 1, where we have now learned that the Vol jump technology was perhaps not ready after all. We start out at Earth, where we are presented with 3 choices. You can do any of these 3 missions in any order you want, but I will go through them one by one. You can investigate the Dolos headquarters. This will yield 45 science and 225 alloys. Then investigate personal location, and this will yield 45 science, 121 alloys and 9 electronics. Lastly, we can scour the globe in search of survivors. This will yield 97 alloys, 149 polymer and 45 science. In addition to that, it will trigger an event on board the Tiqqun, which triggers the Dead Earth Sickness. This gives you a -1 permanent stability modifier to the entire crew of the Tiqqun. At the Urshanabi, you will only be presented with one choice, and that is gather remaining resources. This will give you 42 food. After you've completed the events on Earth and Urshanabi, you'll have to use probes to find more points of interest in the solar system. Venus, which can be found here, offers you 3 choices. You can either restart the assembly line, dismantle the assembly line, or leave the Morbihan station. If you choose to restart the assembly line, this requires 10 alloys, and you'll have to assign a cargo vessel that can deliver the alloys to Venus before the science mission actually begins. This will yield 25 cryopods and 30 science, as well as mentioning Ulixes and the Black Market Society. While those might be useful story tips, you can instead choose to dismantle the assembly line. While those might be useful storyline tips, you are very likely to find the Black Market Society anyways, and thus this might be the better option, because this yields you 15 polymer, 25 cryopods and 30 science. Alternatively, you can choose to leave the Morbihan station, although I'm not sure why you would want to do that, because that leaves you with absolutely nothing and no option to choose any of the other selections instead. Mars, which can be found here, will present you with one option only, and that is to use the Dolos clearance codes to access the complex. This will present you with 4 options, of which you can only choose one. First, we have the Investigate Storage Area. This will yield 31 alloys, 25 cryopods, and 50 science. Option 2 is to inspect the Scientific Study Center. This will yield 30 science and 25 cryopods. The next option is to perform a full sweep of the facility. This does not yield the best results. You'll get 9 polymer and 25 cryopods, but you will also have 2 of your crew members killed. Finally, you can prepare the site for resource extraction. This will yield 17 polymer and 25 cryopods, making the first option that you could choose of the 4 options the best option to choose here. Next, we have Saturn, which you will find all the way down here. Saturn will present you with 2 event choices, where you can either choose to make contact, or you can leave the Black Market Society complex, which I will present immediately, as that just ends the event and you get no rewards and you cannot restart it, so I'm not sure why you would want to do that. Now, the more sensible option to choose here is to make contact. This will present you with an event text that is rather long to read, as well as 15 science, which will be followed up by 2 new choices, where you can either send the team deeper into the station, or you can leave the Black Market Society complex at this stage instead. Leaving does the exact same thing as the first time, so we will go with sending the team deeper into the station. This will progress the event further, where you'll find an almost entirely frozen construction site with a preserved corpse inside of some ice. And this will lead to 3 new choices. You can either attempt to restart the station's heating systems, break through the ice, or again you can leave the Black Market Society complex. First, we'll attempt to restart the station's heating systems. That, however, does not yield very good results and ends the mission. And I also forgot to mention that if you were to choose leave, then again you would also just end the mission by doing that. The final option would be to break through the ice. This is the best option you could choose, not only because you get 2 electronics, but because you get the biometric data sampling of Ulysses, which you will need somewhere else. Next up, we have Neptune, which can be found all the way down here. Neptune will present you with no less than 5 choices. However, if you have not been to Saturn first, this one will be grayed out, and in that case you should leave the Archy station and return later and go to Saturn and do the events there first. We'll go from top to bottom here and try first to collect what's usable from the remains of the Archy station. This choice will yield 12 polymer, 75 cryopods and 15 science, and in addition to that it will not lock you out of the other options. So this will lead to either using the explosives or the biometric data, or you can leave, but this time you are not allowed to return later. Going back to the original event menu though, let's try to provoke a structural collapse and salvage what is left of the Archy station instead. That option will yield 18 polymer, 75 cryopods and 15 science, as well as end the event chain and locking you out of interacting with the frozen corpse. Back to the original menu of choices that we get when we arrive at Neptune, let's use explosives to try and breach the sealed room. Using explosives apparently was not a good idea. Not only does it trigger an internal error in the game because the game is unable to retrieve the name of the science ship, but it also causes one of the station's core support columns to buckle. And that means that the only choice you are left with, except for leaving, is to collect what is usable from the remains of the Archy station. If you choose to use explosives after you pick choice 1 from the original menu, that will additionally cause one of your crew members to die, so I would recommend staying away from using explosives here. Which leaves us with the final option, to use Ulysses biometric data to open the sealed room. This option provides us with a very, very beneficial result. The security system were designed to read the biometric data that we had, and that yields 3 electronics, 50 cryopods and 15 science, in addition to a technology upgrade, which is collapsible frames upgrade unlocked for stockpile small, Note that this doesn't mean that you have something that is automatically researched for the stockpiles. It means that you get an additional upgrade for the technology stockpile. Now, when we click Resume Data Listening Protocol here, we can only leave the Archi station. That means the best way to handle Neptune is to first do option number 1, and then to access the room using the biometric data. That yields the most resources and the best results. Next up, we have the debris field, which can be found down here. In the debris field, you are served 3 different choices. You can investigate the core of the structure, you can investigate the ruined loading dock, or you can investigate the dense area of debris. Now, this is not an exclusive either-or thing, and I believe you can do all 3 of these choices, so let's just go ahead and investigate the core of the structure first. Investigating the core yields good results, in the form of 25 cryopods and 10 science. In addition to that, it also unlocks a new option choice, which is investigate the assembly area, and we will follow up with that one. And that yields an absolutely amazing result, as you get 13 polymer and 250 cryopods. Next up, let's investigate the ruined loading dock. This yields 1 electronics and 10 science. And then finally, let's survey the dense area of debris. And with 33 alloys, 25 cryopods and 10 science, that ends the event chain at the debris field. Now, ignore the fact that I am still researching the debris field here. As you can see, I have 2 science ships, so I was doing these things in parallel. Let's go to Uranus and have a look at the event chain here. We have 3 options on Uranus. We can either carry out ecological analysis, or we can do Naomi protocol and cut down the tree, or we can simply leave. If we leave, then there is no option to return, so that does not seem like a good option. So let's go ahead and carry out ecological analysis. The ecological analysis yielded 15 science, and will lead to another new option here, which is harvest the edible elements of the tree. Keep in mind that if you do the Naomi protocol first, you will lose the opportunity to do these 2 first choices, so I do recommend doing it in this order. Harvesting the edibles yields 25 food, which is decent enough. And then finally, we can do the Naomi protocol and cut down the tree. Cutting down the tree yields 15 science, 25 food and 25 carbon. However, one thing that I'm uncertain about is, since I have not played through the game, I don't know if we will ever return to Sol. Which means that whether this is a good decision or a bad decision in the long term, I don't know. In the short term, it is definitely a good decision in regards to the resources you get, but keep in mind that that's one of the things we get to discover as we play through the game. But for now, this ends the event chain at Uranus, so moving on. Our next destination is the Asteroid Belt, which you will find over here. Again, ignore the fact that I'm still researching the events at Uranus. I have 2 science ships, as mentioned. At the Asteroid Belt, you will get 3 choices. You can either dismantle a part of the facility, you can force entry into the control center, or you can end the event chain and leave the facility. We will start by dismantling a part of the facility. Dismantling a part of the station yields 10 food, 40 cryopods and 15 science, and it also ends the event chain at the Asteroid Belt. Alternatively, we can force entry into the control center. Forcing entry means that we find bodies of former Dolos employees within the control center. And this leads to one of the crew members exhibiting behavior characteristic of dead Earth sickness. It also yields 2 new options. We can either let the dead rest in peace, or we can honor the dead. Now, if we let the dead rest in peace, what happens is this. We get 30 science, and that specific crew member will decide that they want to be left on the facility, which means that you lose a crew member and this ends the event chain at the asteroid belt. The other option is to choose to honor the dead, so we'll try that option as well. That yields rather catastrophic results, as the crew member with the dead Earth sickness ends up killing 4 of the other crew members. This gives you the option to either repatriate that crew member or to eject that crew member. And I'm not saying him or her because this will be different every time you have a ship that goes to the asteroid belt. Let's go with the repatriate option first. That yields 30 science and ends the event chain at the asteroid belt. Finally, you have the choice to eject the crew member in question. If you do that, you will gain 30 science. However, the crew member will be killed and you will have the science ship lost. On top of that, you will also have an event triggering inside of the Tiqqun. I need to see if I can find it. It's probably this one. And that gives you a permanent -1 stability penalty, which applies to all sectors on board the Tiqqun. So this is the definite worst outcome that you can have from the asteroid belt, and it also ends the chain. And now, nearing the end of the event chains in the Sol system, we move on to the Outer Hope. The Outer Hope presents you with 2 options. You can search the battlefield, or you can search the Outer Hope. This is not an either-or, so we will start out with searching the battlefield. Searching the battlefield yields 40 science. And then we move on to searching the Outer Hope. Searching the Outer Hope yields 25 cryopods, in addition to a new technology that you can research, which is called the Outer Hope Black Box, and it also triggers a new event, the Legacy of Dolos. And then finally, you get the option to either dismantle the Outer Hope or to leave the Outer Hope. I will show you the event after we've done the dismantling, because first of all, we will dismantle the Outer Hope. Dismantling the Outer Hope yields 37 alloys and 13 polymer. As for the event that triggered, it is in your science center, and it is just an acknowledgement that you now have the black box technology to research, which you will find in your technology tree up here. And this moves us to the final event chain that you will be doing in the Sol system, which is at Jupiter, and you will have moved the Tiqqun to Jupiter before you get this event chain. So at Jupiter you get 1 option, and that is to investigate the industrial zone. Investigating the industrial zone yields 200 cryopods, and then moves on to extracting IXION from the atmosphere of Jupiter. Extracting the IXION using a miner ship, that yields 45 science, and moves on to preparing IXION for connection to the Tiqqun. The extraction was a success, and the final attachment protocols can be initiated via an EVA airlock. And then you get the choice between either dismantling the surplus equipment at the Hephaestus site, or you can simply just leave. We will of course dismantle the surplus equipment, and let's see what that yields. Now, while you were dismantling the remains, you will also have been contacted by Olympia, which is another AI. And the yield from the extraction is 18 alloys, 2 electronics, 18 food, and 12 polymer. And that ends the chain at Jupiter and is the final science ship event chain that you will be doing in the Sol system. Having gone through the various science ship event chains, there is a couple of things that I would like to mention before we wrap up the video. One of these things is that when an event yields science, you will have to have a science ship in orbit around the planet not doing anything to actually collect that science. As you can see, science will be collected after event completion. The other thing that I would like to mention is that you have to leave the Sol system before cycle 240. I am currently in cycle 203, and if you don't leave the Sol system before cycle 240, you will get a permanent -1 stability modifier to all the sectors on board the Tiqqun, which is rather bad. I mentioned this in my tips video, that you have a certain amount of cycles you can stay in each solar system before you have to move on, or the DES penalty will be added to with a +1, or rather a -1, every time that you stay in a solar system for too long. I hope this guide was of use to you, and that if it was, that you will consider leaving a like on the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel. Keep an eye out for more IXION videos on my channel. I offer guide videos, more science ship event choice videos for the later chapters, as well as a Let's Play series for the game. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you success in your endeavour to save humanity.